You know, when a hacker strikes, it feels like they just vanish into thin air. But here's the thing. Just like a real-world crime scene, they always, and I mean always, leave something behind. So today, we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to follow those digital breadcrumbs and uncover a hacker's hidden footprints. Okay, let's get into it.
So, just picture this for a second. A critical website gets breached. The attackers, they're long gone. And now you're the investigator called to the scene. Where do you even start? We're not talking about finding fingerprints on a keyboard here. We're talking about sifting through millions of bits of data to find the story of the crime. And that's the central question of digital forensics.
Look, to catch a hacker, you've got to think like one. And in the world of web security, that means you have to know their playbook. The most famous one out there is the OWASP Top 10. It basically lists the most common and dangerous security risks. For our investigation, don't think of it as some dry technical list. Think of it as the attacker's greatest hits, their go-to moves.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because you can see how these risks translate into actual moves. You've got broken access control. That's basically just trying to open doors you don't have a key for. Then there's something like injection. That's way sneakier. It's like tricking the system into running your own malicious commands. Understanding these moves, that's exactly how we start predicting the kind of evidence the attacker is going to leave behind.
Okay, so our investigation kicks off right at the heart of the crime scene, the server itself. See, every server keeps this super detailed diary of everything that happens on it. We call these things logs, and you better believe they are the very first place we're going to search for clues.
Let's start with one of the most common plays in the book, broken access control. Just imagine an intruder walking down a long hallway, and they're just rattling every single doorknob, one by one, just hoping to find one that's unlocked. That's exactly what this attack looks like in the digital world.
And man, do they leave tracks. The logs will just light up with a storm of attempts to get into pages they have no right to see. You'll see a massive spike in 403 forbidden errors. That's basically the server shouting "access denied" over and over. And if you look real close, you might even spot them trying to swap out their user ID in a request, hoping to trick the system into thinking they're an admin.
So here's the key takeaway. These clues aren't just scattered randomly. For this specific attack, A01 on our list, the evidence is going to be concentrated in two main places. The server's main access logs, which track every single request, and the database logs, which can show if they try to run queries they weren't supposed to.
All right, let's move on to our next attack, because this one is way more cunning. This is injection. So instead of just rattling doorknobs, the attacker is now slipping a malicious note under the door, trying to trick the application on the other side into doing something really dangerous.
The footprints for this are totally different. You'll find weird-looking code just stuck right into web addresses. You'll see the database suddenly start spitting out errors or slowing to a crawl because it's basically choking on a malicious command. And in the really bad cases, the server might suddenly make a phone call out to some unknown address. That's called a reverse shell. It's the hacker's live open line right into your system.
Now, because an attack like this hits multiple parts of the system, the evidence is going to be spread out over a wider area. And this is where the real detective work comes in. You have to connect the dots, correlating clues from the access logs, the application's error logs, and the database logs to piece together the whole story. Server logs are great, don't get me wrong, but they're the server's memory of what happened. And well, memories can be fuzzy, they can be incomplete. But what if we had a perfect video recording of the crime itself, capturing every single word exchanged? Well, that's where we find our smoking gun, the network traffic. We get that recording through something called a packet capture, or a PCAP. I want you to think of it as a flawless, high-def recording of every single conversation the server has. It doesn't summarize anything, it doesn't interpret, it just captures the raw, unfiltered truth. It is the ultimate, undeniable evidence.
And this right here shows you the difference between a clue and a confession. The server log might tell you, hey, the database crashed at 10:31 p.m. Okay, that's a good clue. But the PCAP, it shows you the exact malicious command, that nasty drop table user string that the attacker sent 1 millisecond before the crash. See the difference? The log tells you what happened, the PCAP tells you how it happened, and proves exactly who was holding the weapon.
You know, every good investigation has a twist, right? Well, here's ours. We've spent all this time looking for footprints and clues, but what if the biggest clue of all is nothing?
No, seriously, think about that for a second.
You can see the aftermath of a major breach. Data's gone, the website's a mess, but when you go to check the logs, there's just nothing. No failed logins, no error messages, just silence. What does that tell you? It tells you the attacker was a pro. They knew you'd be looking. That absence of logs is a massive, blinking red flag, and it points directly to another OWASP vulnerability: security logging and monitoring failures. It means your digital security cameras were either turned off from the start, or even worse, the attacker was skilled enough to wipe the tapes on their way out. The lack of evidence just became the most damning evidence of all.
Okay, so we've analyzed the server's diary, and we've watched the network's perfect recording. For our final step, we're going to examine the crime scene itself for, let's call it, physical damage. In our digital world, this means looking for changes made directly to the system's files and configurations. So here, we're hunting for alerts from file integrity monitoring systems. Think of them like a silent alarm that goes off when a critical file is changed. We're looking for suspicious new files, or maybe timestamps on old files that just don't add up. And we're auditing configuration files to see if the attacker left a backdoor open for themselves, like maybe leaving debug mode turned on. These are the digital versions of broken windows and jimmied locks. All right. We followed the breadcrumbs from the very first hint of trouble all the way to the smoking gun. Now, let's pull it all together. Let's assemble our complete case file and summarize this whole forensic process into a clear, actionable toolkit. So if you remember anything, remember this simple three-part framework. First, you check the logs. That's the server's diary, telling you its side of the story. Second, you analyze the network traffic. That's the undeniable recording of the crime in progress. And third, you inspect the system. That's the physical evidence left at the scene. I promise you, if you look in these three places, no attacker can ever truly vanish without a trace.
And that really brings us to the final critical question. Every system, including yours, is constantly generating these footprints, telling a story, second by second. So the question isn't whether the clues exist, because they always do. The real question is, are you equipped to read the story they're telling you before it's too late?